welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new here. My name is Emily and I do mostly Salesforce tutorials and I sprinkle in some related software. Today we're going to be going over the Salesforce Certified Administrator Exam Guide. So this did change a bit in 2021 and I do have an exam guide for prior to 2021, but now I want to update this for 2022. So let's go ahead and jump into this exam guide. So the Salesforce Administrator exam and the certification are your first step in starting out in a Salesforce Administrator career, or just in a Salesforce career in general. And oftentimes Salesforce will recommend that you have experience with this before taking the exam, but you don't need to have that. And I think that you can study and practice within Trailhead and use Udemy courses to kind of supplement your knowledge enough to be able to get this certification. So let's go ahead and scroll down. About the exam, it is a 60 multiple choice, multiple select questions with 5 possible non-scored questions. So a little bit about this. I'd say it's about 50-50 chance that you get the extra 5. I've had it where I have had the extra 5 and where I haven't. Again, it's about 50-50 chance for at least my experience. These 5 non-scored questions are going to be sprinkled in throughout the exam, so you don't know if the questions that you're answering are going to be the non-scored or the scored questions. So you really have to try on all of these. The non-scored questions are just test questions, or I guess not necessarily test questions. All of them are test questions, but these are possible questions that they will be putting into future iterations of the exam. And they just want to try it out on the exam audience to see how they do and if the pass rate, if the questions are too easy or too hard for what Salesforce is going for. So time allotted is going to be 105 minutes. So that's about an hour and 45 minutes to answer these 60 or 65 questions. That is about a minute and 45 seconds for each question. There is a passing score of 65%. I believe that's around 38 or 39 questions. And then the registration fee is $200 plus applicable taxes, or $100 if this is not your first time. I will leave down below a bunch of links. First of all, there will be a lot of links. But I will put down a place where I look to get vouchers and coupon codes for you. You can do this online or at a delivery center. With COVID going on, you may want to do this online at home. But if that environment is not conducive to you, then you can look for a testing place. You do have no hard copy or online materials, so no water there, no pen, paper, any writing material. It's just you and the computer. If I need a fidget on something, I'll usually use a ring or a hair tie. Now these are a bunch of different training resources and references. So you could do the trails, the practice tests. I do not recommend this practice test. I recommend that you go to focusonforce.com and they will have practice tests for you. And the reason why I like those tests, there are 5 total full-length tests, or you could break it down by each subcategory that Salesforce has for their exams. But they give you an answer why each answer is the way that they are, and they will give you resources on why it was correct or incorrect, and then you can also chat and see the different forums on why that question is, and other people who maybe thought the question and the answer should have been different. There are some super badges. You don't need to do the super badges, but they can be helpful. Personally, I don't think they're that helpful because I get really confused at the business requirements, but that's up for you to decide. You can do a course led by Salesforce. However, these can be really expensive. They do certification days, sometimes where it's like a 5-hour long training from Salesforce that can help you get kind of your footing with it. I'll leave that link down below. They do it about twice a year, maybe 3 times a year. So you just have to keep an eye out for when they're looking to do that in a time that you can make it. All right, let's jump into the exam outline. So there are, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different sections on this exam. The bigger sections are around 20, smaller sections are around 10% of the total questions that you will see on the exam. They did change this, so it will be a little bit different from in years past. So if you're looking for a certification course, just make sure that it is up to date with the 2021 changes, or it's been released since 2021. Spoiler alert, I am releasing a Salesforce admin certification exam this spring, so keep an eye out for that. If this is past spring of 2022, then I will leave the link down in the description, or you can find me on Udemy. But let's go and jump into the exam outline. So first thing we have is configuration and setup at 20%. So this is going to be kind of your day-to-day Salesforce admin jobs, and some of this is going to be your set it and forget it settings. So the first one is describe what you can find in company settings. So the fiscal year and kind of how to deal with the fiscal year, currency management, default settings, business hours, and how business hours might affect other functions within Salesforce, such as case rules and lead rules as well. Then we're going to talk about declarative configuration of the UI. So apps, list views, global actions, app builders, all these types of things. Then you'll be going into the scenario-based questions. So Salesforce, I feel like, has 2 different types of questions on their exam. They give you a scenario, and then you need to come up with the solution to it. Or they're going to ask you more of a define the function of Salesforce. So where do you go to change the default currency within Salesforce? You go to the currency management section. That's going to be more of a definition question, whereas a scenario-based question is going to say Universal Containers has a solution. They're looking for this solution, and then you need to come up with the solution. So one of the scenario-based questions is going to be talking about the proper setup and maintenance of users. So freezing, unfreezing, deactivating, activating users, resetting passwords, that fun stuff. Then you're going to talk about security controls. So the setup audit trail, login hour session settings, and then you're going to be talking about the sharing model within Salesforce. Object level security versus record level security, and what all the different parts of pieces of each of those things do. The next part, you're going to be talking about profiles, permission sets, record types, kind of how all those mesh together, and navigating what happens to a record with this person who has this custom profile and this permission set, but that was also a part of this group. Where does that record go? Who can see it? Who can edit it? All right, let's go ahead and go into Object Manager and Lightning App Builder. We did talk about Lightning App Builder a little bit in configuration and setup, but it is going to be a little bit different within the Lightning App Builder. So you're going to be talking about architecture and relationships, so standard objects, custom objects, the different types of relationships, not so much with external relationships, but more internal relationships with parent, child, and master detail. Lookup junction objects. Junction objects are going to be a huge thing, as well as record types, and how record types play in to the security model, and how they use them with page layouts and with pick list values. Next, then you're going to talk about page layouts on standard and custom objects, and how what happens when you delete fields. The next thing you're going to be talking about are the different scenarios of assigning page layouts, record types, and business processes. Business processes are also somewhat controlled by record types and page layouts. Again, this is going to be for standard and custom objects, so you do need to kind of understand what you can and can't do with a standard object versus a custom object. All right, let's go ahead and move on to sales and marketing. You're going to talk about the different capabilities of the sales process, the opportunity path, a little bit about forecasting, not too much about forecasting. You could learn almost nothing about forecasting and still probably pass. The advanced admin exam, however, not so much. And then you'll talk about using the different productivity tools within sales and marketing. So sales and marketing is going to be account opportunities and leads and contacts. And then you'll talk a little bit about lead automation and campaign management. Not too much about campaigns, but how campaign members work, lead assignment roles, converting a lead, like what you convert it into. You convert it into an account contact and an opportunity, possibly an opportunity, when it's closed out. The main focus should be on opportunities, but you do need to know a good amount on leads. All right, let's move on to service and support. You will talk about case management. And this one is at 11%. So it is a smaller portion. It's not the smallest portion, but 10% is still a really good chunk. So you want to describe the capabilities of case management. So talk about queues, case assignment rules. Case assignment rules are going to be big. Possibly the case process, not too much about entitlements and milestones. You can know almost nothing about entitlements and milestones and still pass, but definitely queues and assignment rules and how those work in conjunction with each other. And then talk about cases a little bit. And then you're going to talk about case management, the support process, the auto response rules, and the case escalation. So all these can be really confusing. And when I was first starting out, I got, case assignment rules, queues, support processes, case auto response rules, and case escalation. I got those all confused. So it is really important to, at the very minimum, know the difference and the role of each of these different things, because they are all very different and they all serve different functions. So case assignment rules are going to take a base of criteria and they're going to assign it to a person or to a queue based upon the criteria. So let's say this is coming in for a certain product, and you have a specific support person who deals with that product. You could set up a rule to automatically assign it to them. However, if there was a group that dealt with that specific product, you would assign it to a queue. The support process is kind of how it goes from a new case to a closed case, and you can have different steps within that. Auto response rules are going to be things like when you send out a support, or you send out an automatic response to the person who sent the email saying, hey, I need support. I think we've all been there where maybe we email Amazon saying, hey, my order didn't arrive, and they said, we're going to get back to you as soon as possible, blah, 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 thank you. That's an auto response rule. It's just the computer acknowledging that your case has been created. And that is very nice to set up. Personally, I really enjoy knowing and getting that kind of receipt. And then case escalation is going to be possibly based upon time or priority or the person sending the issue, and it's just going to move the case up in the queue or in priority. So at one of my first Salesforce jobs, I worked at a consulting firm, and if the title was in management, like it was a general manager or it was a VP, then that case got escalated very, very quickly. And those needed to be responded to within the hour. So that's what case escalation rule is. All right, let's move on to productivity and collaboration. This is going to be the smallest section. So knowing the basics of this is going to be very helpful. Each point counts within the exam, but if this is something that you really struggle with, you don't necessarily need to know every single piece of it to pass. We're going to talk about activity management. So what this is are things like tasks, phone calls. On the side of Salesforce, you'll see log a call, log a case, log an email, something like that. That's going to be activity management. Then we're going to talk about chatter. Chatter is a way to communicate on the record about the opportunity or the lead or something. And then you're going to talk about the capabilities of the Salesforce mobile app. Things like global actions versus the non-global actions within the mobile app. And then we'll talk about identifying use cases for applications on the App Exchange. These questions are going to be very specific and you're going to know them right away. It's going to be some type of phrasing where it says you have a limited amount of resources and you need a custom development. What options do you have? Do you bring on a developer for 2 weeks? Do you just say it's not going to happen? Or do you look for an App Exchange product? And there's almost always going to be an App Exchange product. All right, let's go ahead and talk about data and analytics management. So this is going to be a lot of what do you do with your data? And how do you keep it clean? How do you make the different reports? This is at 14%, so it is a fairly good chunk. I really struggled with this part, but I actually do have a reporting series on my channel. I will link that. And I think you'll find it really helpful, hopefully, to be able to pass this portion of the exam. So you're going to talk about importing, updating, transferring, deleting, exporting, and backing up data. Then you're going to talk about validation rules and different data validation tools, the implications of using those, and when you'd want to use those. Then describe the different types of customizing a report or a report type, what bucketing is, the four different types of report formats. Really know the difference between a report format and a report type. So a report type is the different types of data you're bringing in, like contacts, opportunities, cases, smaller custom objects, smaller standard objects. And a report format is going to be after you've chosen your report type. The report format is how you manipulate the data. So it's going to be, are you summarizing it? Is it just going to be a table of data? Or are you going to be bringing in multiple tables of data? That type of thing. Then you're going to talk about the impact of the sharing model. And this is usually going to be a scenario-based question when you're talking about the impact of the sharing model on the reports. So they'll talk about things like you are the manager. What can you see on your subordinate's report? And it'll give you probably a more complicated scenario than that. However, it will ask you what you'll be able to see or what you will not be able to see. Read that very closely. Then you'll be talking about creating the different dashboards. So dashboard components, the data sources, chart types, subscribing, running user. Almost every type of dashboard component, you'll see it is going to be more of one of those definition questions where you say, I need to see the total number of cases. Well, that's going to be a metric. We'll talk about subscribing, and I do have a video on that on my channel. It is in that playlist. But why would someone want to subscribe? You also talk about running users, more of like what the function of running user is rather than the implications and the issues that you might run into. All right, and then finally, at 16%, you're going to talk about process automation and workflow. So this is really, I think, probably the most thing that has changed since when I took the admin exam. It used to be talking about workflows and process automation tools or the process builder. But now it's mostly going to be talking about flows and approval processes. So I highly recommend that you take I can't remember his name right now. I will link this. There's going to be a lot of links. But there's a specific course on flows on Udemy that I think is really, really good. So go ahead and check that one out. Udemy does sales at least once a week. So if it is a high price, wait about a week and it'll go down in price. But it'll talk about all the different capabilities and use cases for flows, and oftentimes this will be a scenario-based question, or if you're talking about a specific component of a flow, then it'll be a definition-based question. And then the other thing is going to be approval processes. You should really study the different points of an approval process. This will really, really help you if you are strong in both flow and approval processes. So like what the submission requirements are for submitting to an approval process, when you're going to need to use one, what rejection actions you can do, what approval actions you can do, what the different types of approval processes are, like unanimous approval processes, that type of thing. And then with that is the end of what you'll see on the exam. It is a lot, especially if you are new to Salesforce. It can be a lot, but I do recommend that you really get your hands in Trailhead and into an org to be able to really understand. Another thing is understand it so how you can explain it to someone. This is why I started my YouTube channel. I was working on a certification, and I knew if I could explain it to someone, then I was going to remember it for on the exam. So that was really, really helpful for me. Udemy is a great resource. YouTube is a great resource. Blogs are great resources. Just really go ahead and just dive into Salesforce. Be sure to not violate any of their rules. So things like using dumps, exam dumps. You can use practice exams. Practice exams are great. But do not use dumps because they can revoke your certifications. And do not provide dumps as well as part of that. You will have a once a year maintenance to just do a Trailhead module with about 3 to 4 questions on it about what is new and what has changed. You can check these links out for the maintenance on those. So yeah, thank you so much for joining me for this updated exam guide walkthrough. I hope this was really helpful, kind of hearing someone talk about it and kind of explain what you might see on the different sections. Again, if this is past spring of 2022, I should have my own exam out, or not my own exam, but my own exam certification course out on YouTube. As of right now, I have a user training course and the platform app builder certification course, which will be linked as well. I'll also link every link that I talked about today. This is a very link-heavy video. So, like if you found this helpful, subscribe if you're feeling generous or you want more content like this. And comment down below if you have any questions. I will try and get back to you as soon as possible, or the lovely community that we have here will help you out as well. So, I will catch you in the next one.